Welcome to another episode of the Office Altering Hire and Empower with Molly McGrath podcast. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. If you're a first-time listener, hopefully you'll become a long-time listener. As always, I'm your show host, Molly McGrath, founder of Hiring and Empowering Solutions and creator of this revolutionary podcast. You can check us out at hiringandempowering.com. All right, listeners, let's do this. It is the new year, and we have a special treat for you. We have Keith Bailey here, founder and creator of Articulated Intelligence. We're going to have in the show notes a LinkedIn links, YouTubes. We're going to have a fun exercise in the YouTube video for those of you that stay till the end. We'll have Keith's web address, email, all the goodies that you need to get in contact with Keith here. And I'd love your tagline in here that you have: preventing unintentional audience abuse through storytelling. Live life well spoken. So let me tell you a little bit about Keith, and you're going to love this intro. I think it's so cool, so fun, so unique. And Keith is going to give us a backstory on kind of how he came up with this. So personally, Keith moonlights as a feline hairstylist. Once a month, he shaves his two cats because he loves cats but hates the hair. And professionally, Keith helps prevent business professionals from committing unintentional audience abuse by enhancing their ability to communicate for impact, profit, and guess what? Fun. So, Keith, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your backstory on your intro.
About the cats. Well, the whole thing with the cats started. No, I'm just kidding. There are two YouTube videos that, if you are a cat lover but a cat hair hater, I have two instructional videos that teach you how to shave a robust cat and a meager cat, which are the two kinds that I own. But the second part of helping prevent unintentional audience abuse. We've all experienced it, and for myself and for a lot of people who speak, we've even committed unintentional audience abuse. The key word here is the unintentional. It means that we're not doing it on purpose, but it's yet we are still not giving the audience what it is that they need and what it is that they deserve. And one thing that the audience always wants is they always want the speaker to win, to succeed. The audience is always rooting for that person on stage. And the reason they do so is because everybody can envision themselves standing on that stage, and it gives most people pause, trepidation. It makes their palms sweat. It makes them very, very nervous to do so. And therefore, the audience is always rooting for. The unintentional audience abuse occurs when somebody ums and ahs too much is a very common one. Some of the more drastic ones are when someone has a PowerPoint presentation, then they turn their back to you and they begin to read every word that they've ever written on that screen to you like you're in the third grade. Those are just two forms of unintentional audience abuse. And one of the areas that it happens also that is an area of specialty for me is when we deliver just facts and figures, right? This is not Dragnet. We're not Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am. Our audience wants to hear stories. That is how we connect and how we're able to relate to each other. So for me, what I really bring into your ability, not just from a mechanic standpoint, but also from your ability to become a good storyteller.
You know, I love both those examples that you use because I've seen that so often, even in webinars. Like now we're moving for COVID, a lot of times we had to move to webinar format, virtual format. And I see that so often. Many of our listeners are professionals in the professional service industry, and you talk about data and reading from the slide and not incorporating personality and vulnerability. And maybe you can speak into this a little bit of, I don't know about you, but business owners are typically really, really hesitant to get vulnerable, to get real. And when I hear storytelling, From there, like it causes a little bit of skip of a heartbeat, with clients that I've talked to in the past in regards to whether it's speaking or it's putting it out in print, blogs, whatever, that they're hesitant to do that. And they traditionally just anchor to data and facts.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how to get over that fear of getting really real, raw, and vulnerable?
Yeah, let's talk about the Achilles heel of being grounded and delivering just the facts.
Please.
The majority of people's brains aren't wired that way. You are actually excluding the probably like 90, let's go 80-20 rule. Let's make it simple. You're excluding 80% of your audience as to what that data means, right? Is what is missing is the why. And the story
Mm.
helps you tie the why into this. Why is this important to you? I remember when I was a very, very young Keith. I ended up getting my first job, and my first job was washing dishes at a Holiday Inn. And it back in the like this tropical rainforest of a dungeon where the dishwashing machine sat and the endless supply of pots, pans, and plates, I would get to work. And then my boss would walk by. I was like, hey, I was on the line and those pots and pans aren't clean enough. You got to clean them up. And he would just walk by randomly telling me to get better at cleaning my pots and pans. And it just made no sense to me whatsoever. And then one day I had my first getting called into the office. And I remember being sat down and my boss looked at me. He's like, do you know why I tell you to clean those pots and pans? I was like, I don't know. You have an obsession with them? I don't know. I'm 15. What do I care? He proceeded to tell me, he's like, when I got my first job, I was washing dishes at a small little mom and pop restaurant. And what had happened, there was a foodborne illness breakout. They don't know if it started in the dishwashing area, but that was definitely one of the areas that is able to prevent it. He's like, and what ended up happening is the restaurant was shut down. They were fined a lot of money, and I had a lot of guilt behind this because I know I didn't do a good enough job cleaning those pots and pans, and that's why I keep harping on you. Well, guess what happened after that? I took great care in washing those pots and pans. And as a result of that, I put a lot of attention to detail into everything that I do. That is a story that is personal. It's about something that happened to me. I gave you a situation, I gave you an action, I gave you a resolution, and also a why I do what I do. I put attention to detail into everything that I do. It's a simple story like that that yes, am I being vulnerable in that moment? Yeah, I'm letting you know something that I didn't do well. That's something that made me grow. Am I sharing my deepest darkest secrets? No. So the misnomer of having to be vulnerable and share a story that paints me in a bad light, we know that the person who controls the narrative controls the outcome. So when you're able to take a very simple story, and a simple story is key here also because what is most common is most universal. Take a simple story, and then you're able to tell that and tie the meaning and the data to it. So once I start getting into those key points, the audience understands why it's so important that they need to pay attention to this.
The person that controls the narrative controls the outcome.
Yeah, and I think that's a quote by I'm probably going to misquote it, but we'll look it up in the show notes. But I think it's Steve Jobs
Sure.
who said that. Who's he's not the most popular person at all times, but it's true, right? If you look at history, right, the person who from you look at world wars, which have happened, the winner always writes the outcome, and they write themselves as being the righteous one, the one that was in the
Mm.
position. Right? Think about it, like if Hitler had won the whole thing, it would have all been justified, everything that he did. So when you control the narrative, you control the outcome and the meeting. So for your message, right? Let's say you're delivering this data or you're delivering a case. If you can paint everything in a very positive light that makes you look like you're in the right, there's a greater chance
Yeah.
the audience is going to believe you.
Wow, I love that.
Charlatans,
So good.
charlatans use this to the umpteenth degree, right? People who dupe us, they are masters at weaving that emotional story piece that gets us to do things that we normally wouldn't do. So it can be used for bad.
Wow, great. Talk to us about I love putting your back to the audience, reading slides like a third grader, a lot of ums, so's, those disqualifying filler words, and then also data without the why. So, how do we prevent the unintentional audience abuse? And I'd love for you to speak into, you and I were speaking about this earlier, the difference between the presentation and the facilitation.
Yeah. The presentation is speaking at your audience. I'm here to present and I'm going to offload this onto you, and my expectation is that you retain all of this. The part that's missing in there are multifaceted, which is why I talk about delivering a facilitation. Facilitation has multiple parts. The story is one part of it. The content of the data is another part. But here's something that is critical: audience participation. When you bring your audience into the conversation, you have them participate, whether it is a hand raise, or it is giving some kind of feedback, or making them do some kind of an activity. Now what has happened is that they have a vested interest in the outcome of the entire facilitation. And one thing I mentioned earlier is that the audience always wants you to win. So when they
Mm,
now are part of the conversation, they are now part of the entire event, they have that vested interest, and they'll do everything that they possibly can to make sure that everything goes really well because they want you to win. So audience participation is huge. Another one is the audio and the visual. Let's talk about
mm,
the audio. Having that vocal variety, bringing one of the most powerful weapons into any facilitation is this: pause. Silence is one of the most powerful things that you can deliver. It's one of the easiest things to do and one of the most difficult ones to master. And this is what pause will do for the listener. It allows them to catch up, for one, especially if you're delivering lots of data, right? You told a little bit of a story. There's some good pauses in there. It allows them to really paint the picture in their mind's eye and live along with your story in real time. And then when you get to the data, they have to shift their mind to a different part of the brain to absorb that data. But when you parse it out and you add strategic pauses, to you it sounds like a pause because the listener's brain is moving. They don't hear that pause. They're processing lots and lots of information. And if we just talk at the same rate and the same speed and the same tempo in the entire time, like the micro machine man, our audience is not going to retain what we want them to retain. So if it's something that you really like, that strategic key point that they have to know is, the pause also brings the person, once they've processed the information, it brings them back into the moment again. Because when we're speaking, even during this conversation, you and the listeners, your mind has jumped to different things as I've hit upon different cues. Your mind leaves the room for a moment and processes over here. What that pause does is the brain all of a sudden is like, wait, they stop talking, come back, and they come back to you again. So knowing that your audience is always coming in and out of what you're saying, having that pause allows them to process what you've said and come back and center on you.
oh, so even as you're talking, all right, here it is. And I'm taking notes. And then you stopped before you said the pause. And I'm like, wait, what just happened? And that's really great because it causes, it's like, you do a jarring, and it causes for them, I would imagine, just even like you said, like that landing breath of stopping and getting you off the hamster wheel. Then you stop. Now, I love that because as soon as you did that, I'm taking notes, trying to feverishly what you're saying. And when you stop, I'm like, whoa, what just oh, and it was immediate, like, landing breath and regrouping, it felt like. Now, I would assert it's just as equally powerful of what you say and do after that pause to allow I like what you said, allow people to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And the one thing that I did is I I knew what was coming, and I said it. And what I did is I watched you. I was waiting to see
Yeah, it was like
you do exactly that. So when we're standing on a larger stage, I believe in the Shakespearean all the world is a stage, right? This right here, this podcast, and we're on a stage, we're sharing this stage together. So whether you're on the one-on-one stage or you're on a huge stage, when you bring that, when you release that pause, watch your audience. Take a moment because people are going to
Mm.
be down. People are going to be doing something on their cell phone. They're going to be
On their
somewhere,
phone.
and the pause feels like days for you, but it's only maybe 1, 2, 3 seconds, and that brings the entire room right back to you. The next thing you want to do is, you're spot on with that, Molly, is you want to make sure that the next thing you say is very, very impactful. And oftentimes with that, it is taking from where you are standing and moving to a different part of the stage, like having a body motion that goes with that, draws the eye along with you. And especially if you're doing a transition from one thing into the next. So you've wrapped up one thought and you're going into the next by shifting. And it's only, if you have a small stage, it's a footstep. If you watch the really big speakers, they'll walk all the way to the other end of the stage, but the
Yes.
audience is tracking that motion. And so they anchor themselves, come back to the audience, they take that breath, and they say what they have to say. And they will say it with a very specific cadence, because what I'm saying is of the utmost importance. So take what I just said and add whatever words you want to in it, and you will have a very powerful message.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's like you said, that's got to be the toughest, but just even how powerful it is for us to just have experienced that.
Mhm.
Anybody who's listening, I don't care if you're walking, exercising, driving, watching us here on video or what have you, all of us, I know for a fact, all we're like, what the hell? What just happened? And you brought us back. And I love that you say 3 seconds. You know, I could see people being like, "Okay, Keith said to pause." So they're gonna pause for 30 seconds. No. It was impactful to do it for, ta really taking some time. Do you have any kind of drive-by coaching for what you can be saying and doing in your head as a speaker to really make sure that you give it that validity it needs?
Three,
I'm sure you do.
three 1,000, two 1,000, one 1,000. Breath in, deliver. Because I practice what I preach. I will, in my mind, count that time down because I want to make sure I give myself the right amount of time. And with great power of the pause also comes great responsibility. If this is all you do through your entire presentation, it is the same. It turns into an unintentional audience abuse because your audience just gets exhausted from it because it is tiring. Just like too much audience participation, right? It's too
Yes.
much of a good thing is just not good for us. We want to sprinkle all of these things in to our facilitation in a very purposeful manner, to where we're basically, it feels like we're pulling a lever and shifting the audience mindset every few minutes, where we're making this thing happen, whether it has the body motion to it, it has the storytelling, the data, the pausing, and the last part that comes to a facilitation is the visual. What is the audience seeing? I mentioned making a movement, making a gesture. That is a visual piece that we control. So if we're constantly talking with our hands steepled, it becomes a distraction for the audience. If we're always shooting our hands off in multiple distractions, it becomes a distraction for the audience. So as a speaker, we practice bringing our hands to our sides when we don't need them and put them into play when we want to make a very specific point in motion. But the apart from just the body mechanics, there is an incredibly powerful tool that we all use, whether it is your PowerPoint, your keynote, your Prezi. It's that visual component. And one of the greatest abuses, unintentional abuses that I've seen happen since we've all pivoted to this virtual digital platform is the speaker gets introduced. Ladies and gentlemen, here is John so and so to talk about X, Y, and Z. And John says, "All right, can everybody see my share screen?"
Yes.
I didn't come here to see your share screen. I came here to see you. And what ends up happening is when you hit share screen, it is like you are literally leaving the stage and making yourself a tiny little box in the corner. And you're saying to the entire audience, we're going to look at all the words that I'm now going to read to you, because guaranteed there's too many words on that page. We want to have some images. We want to have like a number or two. There's a whole, you can Google all the do's and don'ts to PowerPoints. That's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here talking about when you do have that PowerPoint and you are, whether you're live and in person or virtual, we want to use it sparingly. We want to use it as a piece that accents what it is that we're here to deliver. So in a virtual platform, when you get introduced, start with a story. Start with a story of why this is so important to you. What brought you here? What is your relationship with the person who is introducing you and this community, and bring them into it and let them see you for a few moments. And then when you do use your share screen, turn it on when you need it, turn it off when you don't. That change in levels will keep your
Mm.
audience engaged, because if it's just the share screen, I'm going to take out what is most detrimental to all of us. And actually, the true litmus of a good speaker is how long can I keep you off of your mobile device or from your technologies. So with a virtual platform, it's turning that PowerPoint on and off in the live setting. And I have to tip my hat to one of my fellow Toastmasters, Dermot Truax, who does AV in courtrooms. The man is brilliant, and he imparted upon me something that I use so much is when you're presenting live and in person, and you've got that PowerPoint up. When you don't have anything meaningful, go to a blank screen, because as soon as the screens turn off, your audience is whatever they're looking at on the screen. They've got nothing else to look at but the person who is
You.
speaking. So it brings it back to you again.
Wow.
So what he does is, like, he'll put a little bit of an icon that only he can see in the bottom corner to know that he is teed up and it is live and his next slide is coming up. So that's like one of the greatest hacks, if you will, for the live and present one. The one that I use, and I have an entire e-course on this, which is using your virtual background in Zoom as a part of your presentation deck. So I'm able to change out my background and have new information or new imagery. That way I use my PowerPoint really sparingly. And when I do use it, it is for maximal impact.
Wow. You have an e-course. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the e-course is how to utilize your virtual background as your presentation deck. And what I get into is showing you how to, whether you use PowerPoint, Keynote, or Canva, how to turn your background into the presentation deck, kind of like a telecaster does, right? They've got that image right there, and they're able to change that image out. And I show you how to build that, and then you're able to take your own presentation and build it. Then I show you how you're able to utilize that in Zoom in an active manner, to where you're able to, just one click of a button at a time, change your background out into something else that allows you to really connect with your clients
Oh.
and your audience.
Oh. Alright, you're gonna give me the link? What's this how do we get find out more about that?
So it's on the website. We'll put it in the show notes. It is on my
Okay,
website under courses, and it is called it is the virtual background for presentation decks, is one of the two
great.
courses that I have there. The other one that's on there is master storytelling for job interviewing. Because what is a job interview but a series of short stories about the things that you've done over your career?
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to have you back for that one. That is great, I love it. Talk to us a little bit about facilitation versus presentation, or a lot of it,
Say again.
or a lot of it.
Or
I'm
a
sure you
lot
have a
about it.
lot.
Yeah, a lot about it. The facilitation is, I think it gives you more options, and it makes you think a little bit more critically about how it is that what your performance is going to be. I mentioned earlier that all the world is a stage. How you show up on that stage is a direct reflection of your personal and professional brand, which is why I think it's so critical for anybody who is in a position where you have to speak. And I'm not talking about leadership roles. I'm talking about where the spoken word is a form of your communication, which really means everybody, right?
Yeah.
From networking to the graphic designer having to have a conversation with the salesperson to be able to translate what the vision is of the client. Like, those are all areas of communication to where storytelling is a massive part of it. And for that, I've been a member of Toastmasters for coming up on 8 years. February 14th will mark my 8th year. It's not a cult. I promise.
No.
It is an absolutely incredible organization that allows you to do a similar thing of what pro athletes do. Because there's a direct correlation between everybody who's listening, you and me, and a pro athlete. Somebody who is an expert in what they do. A pro athlete spends more time scrimmaging and reading the playbook than they ever do playing the actual game. So when the time comes that they take the field, they're able to, that Randy Moss, no look, hand up, ball goes in it. It makes it look so easy. That's what we all say. Wow, those guys, they make it look so easy. And the reason is because they practice this on a regular basis. So if communication is something that you do, which it means something we all do, Toastmasters is that scrimmaging ground, that place where you have a chance to stretch, you have a chance to practice and to hone. And probably the greatest thing that I've gotten out of Toastmasters is not an improvement upon my ability to speak. It has improved my ability to listen, with an intent to understand and not to listen with an intent to reply, which is a state that most of us are in. When somebody starts speaking, we have the answer ready to go. But when we really actively listen to understand what somebody else is saying, we actually have a chance to get to know that person.
Mm. Wow, that is so powerful. I've done Toastmasters as well, and the biggest thing I got out of it early on was the clicker with the ums and the so's, which you mentioned in the beginning of it because it communicates what I learned, lack of confidence in you being that expert and authority and really truly to your point, knowing your content, knowing your messaging, and just having it in your bones and your blood.
Yeah. That and ah is also a filler in our mind, and the filler in our mind that translates into that and ah is a fear to have silence. We feel that we need to be filling the space with something at all times, and that is where that and that ah come from, because it's our mind processing in the moment, and it wants to just hold the focus, and it just lets out this which is almost like a test warning sound, right? That comes
Yes,
across.
that's what I thought of.
It's there to try to hold your attention. But if we look at like some of the greatest movies out there, when that moment of drama and that tension comes up and that dialogue is happening, it's when that pause happens in between that really pulls everybody in. And know this to be true. As a speaker, for every speaker out there, there are there are multiple things that are happening. There are the words that you're saying, the words that you're hearing, the words of that you're wanting to say next, and you trying to course correct in the moment to augment those words to come out differently. So there's all these high level functions that are happening when you're speaking, which is why the thing that we practice within our coaching is speaking out loud, speaking and telling those stories, specifically telling them out loud. There's a tendency when we want to do a presentation, we want to incorporate a story, we go right to the keyboard and we start writing that story out. And there's a difference between writing for reading and writing for speaking. Writing for reading is sentences that are crafted and structured with punctuation, and they're sentences and they're paragraphs and they're beautiful. But that's not how we speak.
Mm,
And if you go that route of writing and then trying to memorize it, well, heaven forbid you forget your spots or forget what you're going to say, you're going to freeze up. Also, if you just
yes.
memorize rote, the audience is going to tell it is a form of unintentional audience abuse. When we practice in a speaking format, we have a chance to hear ourselves say it and then be able to rewrite that every single time we say it, knowing that we're never going to say it the same way twice. And that's probably one of the most freeing things that I give my clients is that permission. It's your story. You can tell it however you want to tell it, but you need to tell the story. You need to get the reps in to hear yourself tell that story, because then your mind starts to calm down because it's heard the words time and time again. And that's when you're able to show up really as your true, authentic self, stand up command the stage, deliver something that is personal and meaningful and really helps
Mm.
bring together why it is you do what you do.
Ah, beautifully said. I think that's a mic drop right there. Oh, oh, Keith, tell our listeners, how can they get a hold of you?
No, you can text me at 303-619-5413
Ah,
is the fastest way to get a hold of me. You can
great.
email me at keith@articulated-intelligence.com, or you can come check out our website and actually sign up for a free consultation call. We can talk about what is that you need, what is it you're looking for, and how I can help you best.
Oh. We're going to have everything in the show notes, LinkedIn, all the social profiles, phone number. Thank you for giving that out. That's
Sure.
fantastic. And your email, website, and then direct link to the courses. Highly, highly recommend that you reach out to Keith and get your. I love the power of the pause. Really get your. I know so many of our listeners have watched so many webinars that I have been sent to me over the years, and we can all really learn, especially in this day and age, right? How many webinars, how many presentations, how many videos are you consistently getting in your inbox through email, through social media, through whatever? And I just love everything that you're sharing with us today to really be a disruptor and to really command and get the attention and to show up differently than everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, you watch videos all day and you see them on social media, you're like, either you're bored to death or you're just cringing. And I love that the audience wants you to win.
Yeah, get to the point before I stop caring.
Mm.
It was funny in the midst of the pandemic, and we all pivoted to Zoom. I started hearing the same people like, "Oh, Zoom meetings aren't working, webinars aren't working. People are zoomed out."
Ah,
And I would agree that they're zoomed out because we're not giving them what they need in order to zoom in. Digital consumption is at
oh,
an all-time high, and when we look at what it is that people are consuming, what we see is what they're consuming is information is delivered in bite-sized pieces that have a story attached to it, that give them a chance to buy in, they're able to participate with it in some way. There's the good visual to go along with it. It is a facilitation. That's what gets people to zoom back in and to lean in. When we just show up and throw up, you know what? I'm not anywhere, especially in the virtual realm. I am in my home. I have so many distractions around me that if this is not really hitting home for me, I'm out. I'm out. And it doesn't have to happen. We know exactly what it takes to hold your audience's attention.
mm. Oh my goodness, show up. I love that. Thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
being our guest today. And thank you for continually to be a leader leading leaders in the professional space.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, listeners. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
We've reached the end of yet another episode of the Hire and Empower with Molly McGrath podcast, where dream teams of entrepreneurs in an entrepreneur's world really do come true. Listen, whether you're a business owner, employee, executive, or hiring manager, we fully understand hiring, onboarding, and leadership is expensive, exhausting, often overwhelming, and absolutely time consuming for the already taxed professional. Well, we have your back on all fronts. For 25 years and counting, we have transformed over 4,000 law firm teams into the most efficient, resourceful, and profitable asset of your business. Check out our Smart Hire solution, our employee leadership program, and the 66-day law firm turnaround at hiringandempowering.com.